Okay, Rockfin, are you ready? Oh, you are ready. Okay. Pardon me. Let's get to it. All right. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Sabby Sab Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. Happy Friday, guys. You guys know I love Friday. That's like my day of the week here. Couple of stories want to talk about tonight. I want to go ahead and share my thumbnail and shout out to everyone watching on YouTube and Rockfin. I did get Rockfin working. So I know some of you like to only watch over there. So we should be all set and good to go. All right. Tonight, we are discussing Cornell West calls out Harvard University. Now, I know some of you are aware that Harvard University last year decided not to give Cornell West tenure. He actually just had a recent interview where he goes into a little bit more detail about what Harvard is as an institution. And I think that's something we need to talk about. So we're going to get into that. And I'm also going to discuss Elizabeth Warren backs Joe Biden. So this goes into what I have been saying before about some of these progressives. I think that at the end of the day, they're just still Democrats. They're still going to back the Democratic Party, and that's really not what they're supposed to be there to do. I think some of us would even argue whether or not Elizabeth Warren is a progressive per se. Want to give a couple of shout outs to people in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and get into the stories. All right. Shout out to Little Rock Elevators. It's Friday night and the mood is right. Gonna have some fun, show you how it's done. TGIF. I had a 90s flashback. I used to love TGIF. I loved it. There was like a certain set of shows that came on Fridays. So I used to always look for, that's why I love Friday so much. Like coming home from school, I used to always look forward to TGIF Friday. A Prez Coupe, direct democratic socialism. What's up? Why is Cornell West sheepdogging for the Democrats once again? A Jamu Baraka at bar. I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not talking about that tonight. I'll have to look into that, but welcome. What's going on, Angela? The very best part of Friday is getting ready to kick off. Doobie doobie doo. Hashtag like button smash. Hello to all here and coming into the chat. What's going on? The Traveler says happy Friday. Greetings, Where Pilgrim says, hey, everybody. Where Pilgrim also says anime Sabby making a cameo. Yeah, that's my little Bitmoji. Shout out to Dolores says, hello, everyone. Greetings, Bryce says, hey, Sabby and everyone. What's going on? CBC Voter says, happy Friday, Sabby Sabs. What's going on with you as well? Terry, what's up? Says, evening, comrades. And shout out to Rodrigo says, Sabby Sabs is a gift to the left. Thank you so much, Rodrigo. Thank you. So let's go ahead and get into the first story. We're going to dive into Elizabeth Warren first. I have two clips I want to show you. Both of them are from Case Study QB, and this is centered around the discussion of the student loan debt cancellation, the $10,000, and what has happened and what people think should have been done. This is an interesting discussion, so I do want to get into this. Let me go ahead and share the first clip. Just going to go ahead and do this here. Now, Case Study, again, like, I don't know what we would do without him because he actually takes the time to watch all of these clips. Like, he watches all of this news so that we don't have to sit there and watch it. Isn't that awesome? I don't know where he finds the time. I really don't. Okay, let's get into this first clip. Now, this one, it says Elizabeth Warren full interview on Biden's student loan debt cancellation of 10 to 20K. The NCAA president unhappiness with the proposal. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be NCAAP. Yeah, so the NCAAP president has spoken out about this measure, that it's not enough, that it only benefits certain people. So we're going to go ahead and get into this first clip here because they do talk to Elizabeth Warren about that.
Joining us now is Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, and the woman with a plan for nearly everything, including one for student loan debt. She was, just to say it again, the first 2020 Democratic presidential candidate to propose flat-out broad-scale student debt cancellation when she announced that plan in April of 2019. Senator Warren, thank you for being here tonight. And I should say congratulations on what is a landmark achievement. I know people have issues with it, but let's just first issue the congratulations.
Thank you. And let's just celebrate, because understand 20 million Americans got the news today that they will never have to pay another nickel on student loan debts. And another 23 million Americans learned today that they owe less money than they did before the pandemic started. This is historic. And actually, let's do one more group. And that is all the parents who have younger kids, all the folks who are thinking about going back to school, all the people who are kind of in mid-stride for getting an education. There was another part to the announcement today, and that is the income determined repayment plan has been reworked so that nobody who wants to get an education but can't afford to pay for it has to go through debt hell in the future. We've actually got a plan for people to be able to make it through school without getting crushed by student loan debt. I love it.
Yeah. So if you watched my segment last night, and I'll get back into the clip, I actually talked about this in greater detail. I highly recommend that you go to studentaid.gov's website so you can read all the details for yourself and not just go by what they're saying on these interviews. I think that's very important because on that website, we went through some of it last night, it's lengthy, but there's a lot more detail about this. My opinion about this is I think that the 10K and then the 20K for people who were Pell Grant recipients, I didn't think it went far enough. I think Joe Biden at this point should have canceled all of it. I've been saying that for, I don't know, almost a year and a half now, that's that direction that I believe that he should have gone in. There are reasons why I feel that was not done. Two reasons. One, I believe, is because of the military industrial complex recruitment. They really do need that leverage to recruit people. And right now, recruitment is at an all-time low for the military. So that is one of the recruitment tools that they use. And they particularly target people who live in low-income Black and brown neighborhoods. They target those students to join the military. Now, this is not to say they don't talk to white students as well. Of course they do. But their primary target are those groups. And the reason being is because they can tell them, you want to go to college, join the military, you can go for free. You want health insurance, join the military. We have TRICARE. TRICARE is great. So I know a lot about this because my dad was one of those students that was targeted back in the day, right? So I think that this does not go far enough. And it's kind of frustrating to me to see a lot of these progressives sitting up here praising this as if this is amazing. There's a couple of things I'm going to get into in reference to this. One, to start off with, there's this phrase going around that this will close the racial wealth gap. And I want to be very clear about this because I even hear progressives saying this too. Canceling student loan debt, even if they canceled all of it, does not close the racial wealth gap. The majority of African Americans don't have student loan debt. So when you hear people making that talking point, really need to correct them on that. Now, someone I think that you should follow is Sandy Darity. He's a professor at Duke University. He has done actually a lot of research about reparations. This is dating all the way back, I think, till the 90s. So he actually has explained this multiple times with facts and figures as to why this does not work. But even some progressives like Nina Turner are tweeting that this will close the racial wealth gap, and it doesn't. And in fact, this 10K cancellation and the 20K cancellation for Pell Grant recipients actually does not go far for Black graduates, because we hold the most amount of student loan debt. And that's something they're going to get into here. So let's go ahead and.
I know you have thoughts about this. So I want to ask you what your response is to folks who say, the heads of the NAACP, for example, that this is a meager plan. What rejoinder can you offer to people who say, listen, if you were going to go and do it, it's politically risky. Why didn't you just go all the way?
So look, Derek Johnson, who is the head of the NAACP, fights from the heart. And I give real props for that and real respect. The plan he was talking about was the initial $10,000 and nothing more for nobody. That's not what actually came through. In fact, the majority of people who will get student loan debt will get $20,000 of debt forgiveness. It will be a smaller portion that get $10,000. And of those who get $20,000 of debt forgiveness, these are people who were Pell Grant eligible when they were in college, and that means disproportionately. These are African Americans, they are veterans, they are parents, mamas who are trying to go back to work.
I have to interrupt her here because she's already not telling the truth. The president of the NCAAP actually was not referring to just that 10K. In fact, he said that it needed to be at least the 50,000, but primarily all of it, canceling all of it to actually help Black borrowers. That is what he said. So I can't believe she's actually going to sit here right now and lie on the president of the NCAAP. And I've seen the comments, so I know what he said. Second of all, she's going into this speech about, oh, well, a lot of the Black, graduates, they are Pell Grant recipients, so they'll get that 20K cancellation and da-da-da. She has not answered the question that commentator is asking her. She said, why didn't it go as far? Why didn't you go further? So here comes Elizabeth Warren with the politician talking point, and she's going to pivot and she's going to say, well, let me tell you what we actually did. Let me tell you what it actually does. But she didn't answer the question. I can't believe she has the audacity to get up here and lie on the president of the NCAAP. I really can't. Let's go back in.
And they are first generation students. In other words, we've done what Democrats try to do, and that is pushed more of the resources to those for whom coming to college was a whole lot harder, and those who have a whole lot harder time paying off that debt. So I think we're in a much better place right now with the plan that the president has actually announced. Now, look, I'm going to keep fighting for more because I think there's more good that we can do. But we need to take a deep breath and acknowledge just how historic this moment is and how the president of the United States has reached out to individuals, to middle-class families, to working families, and said, I'm going to put government on your side.
See how she didn't answer the question? There's a second clip. We're going to get into this one as well because this discussion continues. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. One of two. Did I go to? Oh, here we go. Here's the second one. All right, let's get into this clip as well. And again, like I said, it's mind-boggling that she could just lie like that. All right, let's go in.
And I think we need to focus specifically on Black women because they are the sort of most vulnerable, as it were, in terms of the hell of debt, as you call it. Black women, on average, they borrow more than any other racial group. They have to for $41,466. And then if you look at who voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election, Black women went for Joe Biden 90% to Donald Trump's 9%.
I sincerely hope that Black women that have student loan debt remember this. And I'm one of them. I sincerely hope. And the reason why we have the largest amount of student loan debt is because we are more likely to further our education. For example, I went to grad school. A lot of like my Black female friends I know all went to grad school. So it just, when you go to grad school, that is obviously, that's going to increase your student loan debt, right? So if your employer is not going to pay for you to have an advanced degree, which is becoming more the norm now, you may have to take out student loans again. Why are we going to school again to get those advanced degrees? Because a lot of times we need to have an advanced degree in order to move up in our field. I, for one, higher education, I was an academic advisor until January, and worked in higher ed for over 10 years, right? So I, for one, can tell you that certain positions, even as an academic advisor, most of the time it requires you to have a master's degree. This is why we're more likely to go back. At one point, I have to double check the numbers. At one point, Black women actually had the most degrees in reference to graduate school. So this is something to keep in mind. Now, listen to what she says in response to this.
This is a key part of the president's base. They, in many ways, the Black community, starting with the South Carolina primary, helped get him into the White House. When you were talking to the White House about the contours of this legislation, were they thinking about communities of color? And were they specifically talking about Black women who, again, $41,000 of debt, we're talking about $20,000 in relief. That's half the burden, but it's certainly not all the burden.
I certainly carried that message. And I also want to give a big shout out to Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who's been one of our most passionate partners in making sure that the president, the administration, that all of us stay centered on acknowledging who is carrying this debt burden.
I'm smiling because I'm going to show you something that Ayanna Pressley said in reference to this in just a second. That's why I'm smiling.
And that we focus on how to bring that burden down. Look, like I said, I would like bigger numbers. I would like to be able to do more. I am very happy, though, that the president has come this far, and it's going to make a huge difference in the lives of Black women. It is going to make.
No, it is not. It is actually not making a huge difference in the lives of Black women. This is why the president of the NCAAP is saying what he's saying. This is why Black people are complaining. No, we're not really benefiting from this the way that our white peers are. If we were, we wouldn't be complaining. Do you see what I mean? Taking $10,000 away or $20,000 away when you have about $80,000 in student loan debt, that's nothing compared to taking that same amount away from someone who has like $45,000 in student loan debt. It's not the same. I'll let her continue. I'm going to show you what Ayanna Pressley said.
Make a huge difference in the lives of those who've had the hardest time getting to college and the hardest time paying off their debt after college. In fact, by the design of this plan, one of the groups we know is going to be most helped are those who were in default before we hit the pandemic and the pause under the pandemic. And I just have to say about this, we are moving things in the right direction, and it's taken a lot of passion. It's taken a lot of energy. Ayanna's been on the front lines. The NAACP has been on the front lines with Derek Johnson. We have so many partners who've helped make this happen. So many people who started their own independent, not-for-profit advocacy groups to make sure that the student loan debt burden is better understood across America and that we make real changes. And that is what today marks. First step in big structural change. I love it.
We were waiting.
So I want to end this for just a second. I'm going to go back because I want to show you what Ayanna Pressley said. And this is one of the problems that I have with the progressives in Congress, how they just sit up here and they told the Democratic Party establishment line, how they simp for them, how they're even willing to lie for them. So let me go ahead and share this with you because I did retweet this because I caught this, I believe the moment she posted it, and I was like, oh, I need to correct this statement from Ayanna Pressley. Now, this is what Ayanna Pressley said. Let me show you her tweet first. She said, President Joe Biden just canceled student debt. To every organizer who fought so hard, this victory is yours. This is going to change our lives. Do you see the problem with what Ayanna Pressley just said? She said, President Joe Biden just canceled student loan debt. He didn't cancel student loan debt. That is misleading. He canceled $10,000 for people making under $125K, and he canceled $20,000 for people who were Pell Grant recipients. She's lying. How could you tell that? And by the way, she's ratioed in this tweet. Look at this. Elise says, you have disappointed me so much. What happened to you? Weak. Do you see this? And what's really sad is the 6,000 people who liked it and didn't even correct her on it. But I did. So here's my response. I said he canceled $10K for borrowers making under $125K, a means-tested bowl of crumbs. Stop it. I got to tell you, she knew what she was doing when she said that. What's really interesting to me, too, is the number of so-called leftists per se who are saying this is great. This is a wonderful victory. You notice it's mainly the white ones that are saying that. Why? Why is that? They're not affected the way that we are. It's a hot mess. You guys wonder why RBN is in this space, because the narrative that you have been receiving from a lot of these white leftist commentators, it has just been a slap in the face to the Black community. I got to tell you, it's a slap in the face. When it comes to issues and needs, why is it that we are always pushed to the bottom of the list? In fact, I mentioned that, and I'm going to pull that up as well. Oh, I'm calling it all out. I'm calling it all out, folks, because these things need to be said. It's something I've noticed a lot often in this space. And I think more people need to talk about this. And then I'll get back to the video. So I talked about just that. And I mentioned this tweet earlier this morning. Too many progressive commentators have allowed their audience to believe that any policy that doesn't benefit white people is problematic. Ask them why they're against reparations. Ask them why they put Black people last. In fact, I dare you. This is something I've been noticing a long time in this space. And I'll say it again for those of you just joining. Too many progressive commentators have allowed their audience to believe that any policy that doesn't benefit white people is problematic. Ask them why they're against reparations, and some of them are. They've said so on their shows. Ask them why they put Black people last. In fact, I dare you. And the reason why I wanted to point that out is because of this. The people who are praising this crumbs that we're receiving from Joe Biden, most of them are white, or they're professional managerial class and they're well off anyway. You see the problem? You see why I talk about the class divide a lot? This is who the narrative is coming from. So yeah, it's problematic. So they'll cheer for the things that really help out white people, but they'll push down the things that help out Black people. That's a problem. And I hope more people call that out. Now we're going to go back into the video here because it goes on, this discussion with Elizabeth Warren. So let's get back into this.
waiting for that. The Republican Party is certainly not throwing a ticker tape parade over this. And in fact, they seem bullish on this, the utility of this as a political cudgel. I will quote Tom Cotton. There is no such thing as student loan forgiveness. This is a bailout paid for the large majority of Americans who never went to college or who responsibly paid off their debts. There is nothing the Republican Party loves more than a culture war. And they see this as ripe. This is, we know that education is the dividing line in American politics. It's what really separates the Republican Party from the Democratic Party. And Republicans are going to make hay of this and say, this is another handout to the liberal elitist base, courtesy of Joe Biden. The Republican Party is a party of the grassroots working class. Setting aside the validity of that, what is the Democratic response to that? How are Democrats going to field this line of complaints? And it will be something you see a lot of between now and November.
Really quick, I just want to address Jean's comment. I thought a majority of debt was owed by Black women. Yes, it is, Jean. But if you are just joining, I do want to say this. Canceling student loan debt does not close the racial wealth gap. So I did want to add that point because the majority of African Americans do not have student loan debt. And a lot of people are saying that. They're making that talking point. That is actually not true. So let's see what she says here in response to that.
My answer is bring it on. Bring it on. $20,000 in student loan debt forgiveness goes to people who had Pell Grants. 95% of the people who have Pell Grants come from families with incomes of less than $60,000. The people who are being helped here, 42% of them don't even have a college diploma. These are not people who went to Harvard the way that Tom Cotton did. These are people who have been scratching it out at state schools, at historically Black colleges and universities. They have had to borrow money to get there. They've had to borrow money to stay there, and they've had the hardest time paying off their debts on the other side. And here's the bottom line on this one. Debt cancellation is wildly popular across this country. 2 out of 3 Americans basically say, yeah, we need to do it. The big argument among those who think there should be debt cancellation is whether you ought to cancel 100% of it or whether you ought to focus more of the energy on those who need the help the most. The Republicans have got nothing here. And what we have to remember as we have this fight is there's nobody left in America who doesn't know someone who is struggling with student loan debt. It's everywhere around us. It's our neighbors, it's our friends, it's our families, it's our coworkers, it's our fellow students, it's the people we live with and work with. And what's happening to those folks right now? They can't move out of mom's basement. They can't save up money to buy a home.
Let's talk about that for just a second. Can't save up money to buy a home. This $10,000 cancellation and the $20K for people who are Pell Grant recipients is not going to help you buy a home. What would help you buy a home is canceling all of it. And they're doing this talking point too. Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Ayanna Pressley, all of them. Now they'll be able to buy a home. No, you won't. That's not enough. Are you kidding me? They're acting like they really came in and they just swooped in and saved everybody. She brought up the African-American talking point again about how they're the ones that will be mostly helped. And I just told you that is actually not true. It benefits white borrowers more than it benefits Black borrowers. This is why the president of the NCAAP is livid. This is why he said it needs to be at least $50K or you have to cancel all of it in order for Black people to really benefit from it. And Elizabeth Warren, I believe, knows that. This is awful. This is awful. I just can't believe more people are not correcting them on this. This actually, though, is going to lead me into our next discussion, which is also higher ed related, and that is about Cornel West. Now, most of you probably know last year, Cornel West did apply for tenure at Harvard. Unfortunately, Harvard decided not to give him tenure. So he had an interview recently where he goes into a little bit more detail about that, but also he discussed Harvard as a brand. And there's some things I want to say because I've worked at Harvard, I've worked at MIT, I've worked at Boston University, and there's something about these schools that Cornel West is going to mention, and I'm going to elaborate on from my own personal experience as to a big part of the issue. So let's go ahead and share that one first. Where are we? There we go. Going to get this video going here. Now, this interview is with Ariva Martin. I'm going to start around here. Let me go ahead and share, and we'll hop on into that. So it's time for Cornel West to spill the beans. So here we go.
From Harvard hit me really hard. You know, I'm a Harvard Law School graduate, and I'd like to think that the university that I take a lot of pride in saying that I'm associated with would have known better and would have done better. And I think it's hard for a lot of people like me to understand, how can someone like you, given the body of work that you have, given that you had tenure at Harvard at a previous time, how could you be in this position where they weren't offering you tenure this time? Help us understand that, because it's really hard for us to wrap our brains around that.
Yes, we'd have to ask the Harvard administration about that. You know how ridiculous white supremacy can be. You know how ridiculous any set of prejudice. It could be against Palestinians, it could be against Arabs, against Muslims, against women, against Jews, or whatever. And when these prejudices begin to operate, then it clouds their judgment in terms of academic standards. And we know all of these universities have good people, and they have people who need much more work to do, spiritually and morally. And it is ridiculous and ludicrous. I've been a university professor. That's 12 professors out of 2,000 at Harvard in 1996. But in 2021, they only want to put me up for a tenure process. I mean, it's sick. It's ridiculous.
Let's comment on that for just a second. Yeah, I know the volume is low on that video. That's why I have the captions on. But he's talking about you have to understand white supremacy in reference to understanding why Harvard did what they did. You have to understand how these institutions work. And I, for one, having worked at those institutions, I can tell you firsthand that when you think about these schools like Harvard, MIT, Boston University, well, MIT, I'll give them a little bit more credit. They seem to understand the issue a lot better than the other two. And they've at least tried to put things in action, but they still got some work to do. These schools, these types of elite institutions, these schools were not designed to work well for African Americans. These institutions were designed to work well for white people. And you have to understand that going into it. It took me a while to figure out why things worked the way that they did at these schools. But then when you look at the history, how did these schools start? You look into a history of Harvard University and you see that Harvard University was once a part of eugenics. Then you fully understand why things work the way that they do at these institutions. A lot of times, the individuals that work there, they mean well. They really believe that they're doing the right thing, that they're trying to help you. And I had this conversation actually in January when I left Boston University. I explained this to them. But what they don't fully grasp is that they are a part of the problem. These institutions are basically modeled after the U.S. government. You have a president of the university, just like you have a president of the United States. You have donors to the university, just like you have donors to politicians in DC. You have a board of trustees. It's designed after that model. And what you have to understand is that just like how politics works in DC, at a lot of these elite institutions, everything is responded to by the donors and the money. So if the donors are not happy with the message that's coming from the university, if they're not happy with the direction that the university is going in, they will threaten to withhold their money. And I've seen this happen myself. So when you have someone like Cornel West, who stood for Palestine instead of Israel, that's a problem for Harvard. Because if you look at who their donors are, you would understand why that's a problem. When you see that people like Robert Kraft, Michael Bloomberg, these are all donors of Harvard. They went to Harvard. Then you understand who controls the message and who controls the narrative. It's not so much about, yes, we have diversity and we are great, as it is about what do the donor class want from Harvard University. It's more about a brand. And Cornel West is going to go into that. I'll try to see if I can turn up the volume a little bit here. I have volume booster here. Let me see.
I'm much more concerned about the young brothers and sisters of all colors, but especially the chocolate ones who are locked in the situations of being disrespected and devalued and dismissed, that don't have a landing ground. I can go back to Union. I had a number of universities to offer me positions right after the word got out. But for the other folk, they don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have a spotlight in that way. And that's why it's so very important to cast a spotlight on these universities as a whole, the tie to their donors, the tie to their big money, the prejudices that are operating, the difficulty of treating people fair, and most importantly, to get them to respect Black people.
It's so important, that you.
I'm going to chime in here for just a second. You heard what he just said. To get them to respect Black people. But again, those institutions are not designed to really support and understand that group of people. I'm going to say something here that might surprise some people, may rub people the wrong way, but I'm just going to keep it real. Again, I had the personal experience, so I know firsthand. Those institutions, the Harvards, the Boston universities, the Boston College, let's throw that one in there too, because that's another one. Those institutions are not for Black people. Just telling you, they're not. Now, is this to tell you not to attend those schools? That's totally up to you. But I think that you should be prepared for what you may experience there. He's right. There is a lack of respect when it comes to African Americans there, not just the students, but also the faculty members. Black faculty members are not given the same amount of respect that the white faculty members are at those schools. I've seen it. You also have this notion where you have people who are a part of the department, they're a part of the hiring committee, and they believe that if they get one Black person, one Black faculty member in the department, they believe they're all set when it comes to diversity. That's how they think. I'm not kidding. So now you have what was supposed to be diversity is actually turned into tokenism. That's what happens. The same thing happens with the students as well. And I know that sometimes, people want to go to these schools. They want to work at these schools because of the name, right? Or they want to attend these schools so they can get like the best education. But define best education. Because I've known people that have gone to Harvard and they'll tell you it was very difficult to get in. But when I'm comparing their work and my work undergrad, and I went to a state school, it really wasn't that much different. So you're really paying for a name. That's really what you're paying for. But these schools have never been able to fully accept and fully appreciate and fully welcome African Americans at these schools. They just want to get you there so they can say they have diversity and it helps their numbers. It looks good. Looks good on paper too. The problem that you'll face is that, but once you're there, you're on your own. Let's go back in.
Mentioned that there's some professors that don't have the platform that you have. I did a show on racism, structural racism as it relates to colleges and universities, and talked to some of those younger Black professors who are
beautiful,
you know, to get to the position that you are. And they highlighted just what you said. When you have a body of work like yours, when you have a platform like yours, you know, you're in a different category, but even that category doesn't shield you from the racist policies at these institutions. Your resignation letter, brilliantly written, you know, you tweeted it out to your over 1 million Twitter followers. It went viral. And after an outcry, Harvard did offer you a 5-year contract with consideration for future tenure. They offered you more money. They offered you a chair, but you said no. You said no to all of those additional offers. Why did you turn down, you know, the additional things that were offered after, you know, the big outcry?
I mean, one is that I told Harvard, they don't know who Irene and Clifton West is in terms of mom and dad. You know what I mean? They don't know the best of Glen Elder, which is the Black community I come from, Shiloh Baptist Church. You can't negotiate respect. I know where you're going to throw big money, throw big title, but still say no tenure. No other professor has that. They themselves are tenured. They wouldn't have that. So they think that I'm so spiritually impoverished that they could just throw money at me and I take it. No, I honor my mother and my father. That's the 5th commandment.
Okay, that's a good point that he also brings up there, that they tried to offer him other things instead of tenure, hoping that he would just accept that. No, you don't accept the bare minimum. You accept what you deserve. So he was right to reject it. And here's the thing. Some Black faculty members would have taken it. Some of them would have said, that's okay. That works out. And he told them no, as he should have. Tenure is a big deal. When you have tenure, you are basically locking in your spot at the university as a faculty member. It is very hard to fire someone that has tenure, for those who are not aware. Very difficult. Now, I do believe within the next coming years ago, I think tenure is eventually going to be on its way out, because it's almost, very difficult to get. Universities don't have a lot of tenured spots for people who are faculty members. Universities are hiring more adjunct faculty members, which a lot of times they're part-time and the university doesn't offer them benefits. It's a cheaper way for them to go. Again, you have to understand it's not a college per se, it is a business, and that is how they operate. So kudos to Cornel West for not accepting the bare minimum. And honestly, this is another example of them not fully understanding that a lot of times it's them that is the problem. Again, they think they're doing the right thing by turning to him and saying, we're going to offer you extra money and we're going to make you a chair of this department and so forth. They actually believe that they're doing the right thing. And this is why I think for people like me that worked at these institutions, it was very difficult to grasp sometimes, like how they could not understand that it is basically an insult. You don't give the Black people the scraps and you give the white professors tenure with pretty much no questions asked. You don't do that. And I think what they did there to Cornel West, I think that was an insult. Let's go on.
They taught me integrity. They taught me dignity. And there's no way that I'm going to undercut my own dignity by just taking their money. What does it profit a man or woman to gain the whole world and lose your soul, your integrity, your dignity, your sense of being a human being beyond money, beyond buying and selling,
I'm glad you quoted that scripture, Dr. West, because you accused Harvard in the resignation letter of spiritual rot. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by spiritual rot?
You remember in Hamlet what Shakespeare writes, something is rotten in Denmark. The hounds of hell have been unleashed. What are the hounds of hell? Greed, hatred, hypocrisy. We go on and on. Well, that rot has set in at Harvard, and Harvard is much more concerned about its brand and its reputation than it is its educational cause and focusing on young folk. I've noted in the letter, for example, I taught 5 courses. Most of your big money professors only teach 1. But they're not in it primarily for the young people. Right. They're in it for status. They're in it for spectacle. They're in it to
I'm glad that he mentioned that point as well. Yeah, that is kind of a thing. Typically, the faculty members that are teaching more courses tend to be making less money. You would think it would be the other way around, but no, they'll usually spend that other time working on their research. So like he said, you had faculty members that only taught 1 class. He was teaching 5 courses, but they were making more money. You see how this works? Look, if they would do this to Cornel West, what do you think they would do to someone, I don't know, like someone that's not known at all? If they would treat him this way, come on.
To be a peacock. I'm not a peacock. Peacock struck because they can't fly. No. I don't come from a peacock people. I come from fruit, foliage. By your fruit you shall know them. This is what I love about Brother Mark Riley Thomas. He understands. It's by fruit. It's the hospitals he's built. It's the impact of the lives that he's been able to have. That's the measure. And so all the money in the world, all the status in the world, big chair, they offer me 2 big chairs in 2 weeks. I said, do you know who you're dealing with? I'm a cracked vessel. I'm just trying to love my crooked neighbor with my crooked heart. But I can't be bought. Right. That's the lowest kind of response you can have to what I'm talking about. You can buy some of these other Negroes if you want, but you can't buy me. No. No way.
Professor West, you're no stranger to these Ivy League institutions. You've been at Yale, you've been at Princeton. This is your second go round at Harvard. Help us understand how in 2021 what you're describing at Harvard sounds worse than when your first go round at Harvard. So rather than making progress in terms of race and the approach to racism and inclusivity, diversity, equity, seems like Harvard has gone backwards.
And they have been going backwards. You would think things would be better today than they were years ago, because he has worked at Harvard twice. But no, it's actually worse today. There's a lot to be said about this. There's a lot of things that go into it. Like I said, a lot of these universities, they are more of a business. They're just focused on big money, all that money coming in, and their name and their brand, and anything that stands in between that, their brand and their name, they don't want anything to do with it. I know university presidents right here in Massachusetts that are making millions of dollars. The president of Boston University makes $2 million a year. And the only reason I know this is because every year the Boston Globe puts out that salary amount for every president at the universities here in Massachusetts. So you can see how much everyone is making at these schools.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know you represent the best of the legacy of Harvard Law. Harvard Law got some wonderful people. Derek Bell was my brother.
Yeah, I love Derek.
Charles Ogletree was my brother.
Yeah.
Lonnie Guarnier was my dear sister. So the people need to know that when I talk about the spiritual rot at Harvard, that doesn't mean everybody at Harvard. Harvard's got the best and the worst, but it's the dominant tendencies of an institution. And I think there's a sense in which Harvard has gone back. There's a sense in which the shadow of Jim Crow under the super official language of diversity, equity, and inclusion has put out certain Black faces that are highly visible. But when you actually look at how Black people are treated, when you actually look at the percentage of Black faculty, even with Black folk in high administrative positions, if you actually look at the percentage of Black faculty, it's very, very, very small.
Yeah.
So that's not progress. That's not moving forward, but it is moving forward in terms of your PR activity, in terms of your projection of your image and your reputation. It looks like you're doing so much. So that
Right. And this is what they do, right? You might see a couple of Black faces in high places at these universities, but how are those people treated? And I can tell you, I've seen rotating doors like no other when it came to Black faculty members at some of these universities, when it came to Black leadership and admin positions at some of these universities. And then they wonder why they don't stay. We have to do something about the diversity problem because we only have one Black person in this department. Well, maybe instead of approaching it from that lens, maybe you should take a step back and ask this question. Why are the Black people continuing to leave? Why can't you keep Black people here longer than a year? What's the deal with this rotating door? Black people come in and they leave. Maybe that's what they should be looking at. Now, I tried to explain this multiple times to senior administration at Boston University, to mid-level administration at Boston University. And it wasn't just me. The few Black people that were there in the business school, we had these same discussions. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why they were struggling so much to get this. You walk into a faculty meeting, why are all the faculty members white? Oh, we're fixing that diversity thing. They hire that one Black faculty member. And by the way, they'll do a double minority. So they get like 2 points. So they'll hire a Black woman, say, look, we hired a Black female. That Black female walks into that faculty meeting, which is mainly all white men. They have no sense of community. They're not welcome there. They're over-talked, interrupted, dismissed, devalued, and then they leave. They just want those faces there because it helps the brand. It helps Harvard. It helps BU. It helps MIT. They don't actually want to do the work that it takes to make sure that once those people are there, they're actually welcomed. They actually feel comfortable. And so I've said this before, and I'll say it again for those of you who just joined. These institutions are not for Black people. The Harvards, the Yales, well, Yale can be kind of funny. The Harvards, the Boston University, Boston College, the MITs, these universities are not for Black people. That's something you need to keep in mind. They were not designed to be for Black people. They were not designed to welcome Black people in the way that they welcome white people. They don't get it. We'll show a little bit more and then we'll come out.
That's what I think, Sister Nicole, thank God for her. She was courageous in terms of turning down her alma mater. And, she got a right to love her alma mater. It shaped her. But at the same time, she got her dignity. I applaud what she's doing on the way to Howard University. Howard's a great place. Howard has its own challenges in terms of making sure it treats its faculty, especially adjunct professors, right, as they try to unionize. But all of these institutions are influenced by the dominant forces in our society, which are big money. Big money talks. Big money checks.
The numbers, because the numbers are
I don't have time to go through the entire interview, but definitely check that out. There's a little bit of audio issue with that, but I thought that conversation was really important for people to hear. I can only imagine how Cornel West must have felt. For me, I was just an academic advisor, but for Cornel West, come on, people know who you are. You've done so much. You've been an activist. You've been involved in civil rights. Like you're a champion to civil rights. You were a part of Bernie Sanders' campaign. You've written several books, several speaking engagements. I mean, you put him in the same category with Chris Hedges and Dr. Wolf. So to receive that type of disrespect from Harvard, especially after you had already worked there before and you come back a second time, it has to make you feel some kind of way. But that's how these institutions are. I tell you, I don't miss it. I do not miss it. The students, yeah, you always miss the students, but I do not miss the system that is in place and is designed that way on purpose. So let's go to some of the comments here. Steve, thanks for the super chat, Steve. People, please Google Angelino Heights protest / Fast and the Furious filming. My neighborhood is protesting at 5 p.m. I will be there. Oh, I'll have to Google that. I mean, I don't live in California, but I'll have to Google that and see what that's all about. Fast and Furious filming. Interesting. Huh. Thank you for that, Steve. Yes, Paul, I mentioned that earlier. There are endless Black issues, but he lost his position solely because of his love for Palestinians. Yes. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. Felipe says that's why they did it. They treated him like they did Du Bois at the end of his life. Roger Meadows said, Sabrina, do you think Uncle Thomas, Justice Thomas, ruling against affirmative action at these colleges and university caused this, or was it combating this? No, that didn't cause it. This stuff has been going on for a long time. A long time. Uncle Thomas. That's kind of funny. New name. Yeah, I want to know too. What's up with Fast and the Furious? I want to know too, Steve. Steve, I don't know what happened. But let us know what's happening with that protest there. Eric W. says, as a poor white person, I always felt like an alien in academia. The class differences are palpable. Yeah. There's a lot of elitism, man, especially at the private universities. I'm telling you. Bryce said, I just think of Anne 1 documentary and what happened to the players. Don't tell me, Bryce. I actually haven't watched that yet. That's on my list. I do want to see that. Casey says, unacceptable, no more. Abolishment of this KKK systems. It's 2022. 100%. I feel you, man. I told you, you would think things would be better, but they're not. Let me go ahead and pull this over here. So I am going to, why is this my mouse or what is this? Why are you moving over there? Okay. Anywho, if you do want more Sabby, you can catch me in about an hour. I'll be on my channel. I have a guest coming on. Is going to share a story about what happened to her at Starbucks. But if you want to see me in an hour, tonight, I'm going to discuss Joe Rogan exposes Mark Zuckerberg. We're going to have a deep conversation there about censorship and when it comes to social media. I'm also going to discuss Roger Waters listed. So they're coming after Roger Waters now. I knew this was coming. And I have a Starbucks employee that was fired for trying to unionize. She's going to be coming on tonight to share her story. So definitely check me out in an hour if you want to see more of my face. But yeah, man, you guys, like, you have to like debunk these narratives. And oh, I did forget to show you that tweet. I'm sorry. The Sandy Darity tweet. I'll show you guys now. I forgot I did have the link pulled up because I want you to share this with as many people as you know, because like I said, people are spreading this rhetoric and it's not true. So Nina Turner tweeted, canceling just $50K of student debt per person would immediately increase Black Americans' wealth by 40%. it should all be canceled. And Sandy Darity, who, like I said, he has done a lot of research on reparations dating all the way back to like the 90s. He's been doing a lot of research on this. And he said, I favor student debt cancellation, but at best, it would raise wealth only for Black folk holding student loan debt. Vast majority don't. And it will have virtually no impact on the racial wealth gap. Why do you keep repeating this dubious statistic? You guys see the problem? You see the problem with the narrative on the left? And he's right. I looked at his research. A lot of people are repeating that rhetoric. All they have to do is talk to someone who's done the research. So there. All right, guys. That's it for me tonight. I'm heading out. Have a happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And bye.